rundown of our agenda for the day. We will start more formally in a moment with a presentation on of a recap of yesterday's meeting, and then we will pass it along to the market trends session 2 with private sector perspectives, barriers and opportunities for the Guyana forest sector. This will be in a roundtable format and will offer an opportunity for lots of question and answers from participants. And as in yesterday, we are doing our best to ensure that we attend to to as many questions as possible, but we also ask that you have patience with the fact that we won't be able to attend to all the questions. So without further ado, I would like to pass you over to Rohini Karat. Rohini is project manager for the European Forest Institute Technical Assistance Project in Guyana. This project is supporting the VPA implementation in Guyana, and Rohini will give us a recap from yesterday.
Good morning and warm welcome to everyone. I'm pleased to provide a brief recap of day 1 session, and I will do so through a PowerPoint presentation. So I will now share my screen. Okay, so day 1 of the event titled Markets, Technologies and Communities, Lessons and Experiences for Forest and Wood Product Sector in Guyana really sought to set the scene for the remaining 3 days of the event. The session, the event was open with a formal welcome from Mr. James Singh, former Commissioner of Forests in Guyana. He has been there as Commissioner for the past 21 years. And this was followed by remarks from distinguished guest speakers and an overview presentation on the Guyana-EU VPA. The opening session was followed by the first session on market trends, and which sought to look at global market trends, and a question and answer session. I will now provide you brief highlights of the day. The opening session was moderated by Dr. Al-Hassan Atta, who is an independent consultant from Ghana, but more importantly, the former FLEGT facilitator for the Guyana-EU VPA in Guyana. We had distinguished guest speakers, which included the Honorable Vikram Bharat, who is the Minister of Natural Resources. Also, the Honorable Fernando Pons Canto, Ambassador of the EU delegation in Guyana, and Honorable Greg Quinn, who is the British High Commissioner to Guyana. So key takeaways from this high-level session were that the formalization of the VPA has been instrumental for combating illegal logging, improving forest governance, respecting indigenous rights, and promoting legal and sustainable timber. These are all key for Guyana's access to international timber markets. In addition, despite the Brexit and the separation of the UK from the EU, the UK remains committed to the VPAs to implement bilateral agreements for Guyana through their support through the Forest Governance, Market and Climate Program of the FCDO. The VPA is a forest governance scheme. Preservation of natural resources and good governance of forests is top environmental priority for the EU. And that is why they put so much effort and funding into this type of agreement. Also, Guyana reconfirmed its commitments to the VPA and other international treaties. And this platform for sharing of experiences will be very important for Guyana in going forward. The high-level session was followed by a presentation from Mr. Kenny David, giving an overview of the Guyana-EU VPA, looking at overview, progress, and beyond. Some key things that was mentioned in that session, that presentation, was that Guyana was one of the first countries in the region to initial the agreement with a great range of stakeholders and beneficiaries. And while the high point of the VPA is to curb illegal logging, it also served in the country to control unfair competition and to ensure that the people who should benefit from the trade are able to do so, such as forest communities. And some important milestones in the path of FLEGT licensing include a system for improved data capture and transfer mechanism, improved transparency and information sharing mechanisms, greater interagency collaboration and efficiencies. And in Guyana, one should know that there are 16 agencies participating in the VPA. So that closed the opening session. And after then, we moved into the first market session, which focused on global market trends. This session was moderated by Vanessa Ben from the Wijma International Center, and key speakers were Fabian Jones from the Guyana Forestry Commission and Rupert Oliver from the FLEGT Independent Market Monitor. In this session, the main takeaways were the main challenges for Guyana are being a primary processor, a limited ability to produce and meet global quality standards, low levels of managerial and technical skills, and high cost of production. Also, Guyana timber exports are primarily based on the export of primary timber products and plywood, and to a lesser extent on export of value-added products. Guyana key timber markets are located in Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean, North America, and Europe, and to a lesser extent Africa and South America. There has been a decline in the exports from Guyana over the past 5 years. There's been a downward trend, limited range of products, downward trend for China and India. And EU is a small importer of Guyana timber products. If we look at the figures, approximately 10% of our export are destined for the EU market. In addition, as a COVID-19 effect, imports were down in May for the EU, but recovering. Now, not as low as expected, as home improvement and gardening were still strong during the lockdowns. And with construction receiving stimulus packages, EU imports from Guyana have mainly been rising. And this has been since 2015. There are also many opportunities for legal timber in the international markets. Those were the main takeaways from yesterday. I now hand you back to Amy, who will introduce the moderator, and we will go to the next session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rohini. So it's my pleasure to introduce you all to Rafiq Khan, our moderator today. Rafeek is a Guyanese-born entrepreneur and business developer with over 20 years experience in the timber industry. His astute business foresight and profound interest in Guyana's renowned tropical hardwoods led to the establishment and progression of several Guyanese and US-based multinational corporations such as Woods Direct International, Durable Wood Products, and Duravilla Homes Guyana, Inc. Each company has its core function with specialization in sustainable harvesting, manufacturing, marketing, and global distribution of all product types. Presently, Mr. Khan is the chairman of the forestry subsector Guyana Manufacturing Services Association, GMSA. He also served on the board of the Guyana Forestry Commission, GFC, where he represented the private sector. He has traveled to numerous countries to promote Guyana's tropical hardwood species and learn about various country challenges within the industry and doing business with Guyana.
Thank you, Amy. All protocols observed, distinguished presenters, special invitees, force operators, and fellow manufacturers. Good morning and good afternoon, depending on your time zone. I would like to take this opportunity to say a special thanks to my panelists. We have Malcolm Scott with us from New Zealand. The time for Malcolm there is at around 2 a.m. in the morning. We have Wim Hup from Holland. I think the time in Holland is probably about almost noon or so. We have Andrew Stanigar from Jamaica, and he's in our time zone. So thank you for the panelists. And I would like to say a special thank you to those who are up front, those who are working behind the scenes to make this session possible. Thank you especially for allowing me the opportunity to be on this session here today, for those who would have nominated me to participate. Today's session is going to be discussing market access and barriers to trade. But please indulge me to just read you one or two paragraphs about a little bit of history of Guyana's movement of timber since 250 years ago. Almost 2.5 centuries ago, it is believed that the first shipment of timber from Guyana arrived in Europe. It was around the year 1770 when a small cargo shipment of greenheart landed in Liverpool. The engineers of that time quickly realized the potential of this wood for all classes of heavy construction work. After the use of greenheart in England's seawater, it was realized that greenheart withstood the onslaught of all marine borers in a way unequaled by any other wood species. In the 18th century, the pioneers of the industry started to extract greenheart to serve markets which required timbers to construct docks, mainly in Liverpool and other British and Dutch ports. To this date, greenheart continued to be widely used in construction of piers, jetties, wharfs, shipbuildings, dock gates, lock gates, housing, and many other purposes across the globe. The main imported markets include the Caribbean, the United States, EU, UK, New Zealand. Other timber species such as Wallawa, Moor, Purple also gained popularity over the last century. So today's session, we're going to be discussing markets and the barriers, and our panelists, I'm going to give you a brief introduction about each of them. Mr. Wim Hup from Holland, I have known him for almost 20 years since I've been in the industry. And Wim has been buying timber from Guyana for the last 40 years or so. His company is approximately 125 years old. Wim is no stranger to many of us in Guyana, and we welcome Wim here today as he prepares to assist us with some questions and answers from both myself and from the audience. Also, I would like to introduce to you Andrew Stanigar. Andrew is from Jamaica. Andrew is an entrepreneur there, and he will tell you a little bit more about himself as he goes into his presentation. Actually, everyone will. But Andrew, I've known Andrew for almost 10 years or so, and Andrew has been expanding rapidly in Jamaica with his distribution manufacturing business and focus in roofing and other building products. Then we come to Malcolm Scott from New Zealand. Malcolm's company, oh, by the way, Andrew's company is about 23 years old and counting. Now coming to New Zealand, Malcolm Scott from New Zealand. Malcolm's company is about 123 years old, and Malcolm is third generation owner. He sold his company several years ago and now working for the company. He brings with us today wealth of experience within the sector. All three of these distinguished gentlemen will give you vast experience as we have our discussion today. I would like to first welcome Wim as he brings together his presentation in a PowerPoint format, and he will take 5 minutes, and then we'll do a little brief interception, and then we'll go to the next. Proceed, Wim.
Yes, thank you, Rafiq. Can you hear me?
I hear you well, thank you.
Good, okay. Yeah, thank you for the introduction, Rafiq. Well, the first slide is to show you our name. It's our full name is Wijma Kampen B.V, which is the name of the company located in the Netherlands. We have the holding company, which is also in the same office, and we have sawmills abroad in Africa, and we have companies in France and Germany, and a sales office in the UK. Next slide, please. This is an aerial view of the company in the Netherlands. We used to have a sawmill, which is the big shed you see as a dark building. In this particular shed, we used to saw ackee logs, or also known as azobe, imported from Africa. We do not cut this anymore. We have several CNC machines which we operate in machinings like building log gates and bridges, of which you will see some pictures later on. Next, please. Yeah, this is one of the art pieces which we did. It represents a table which is now on exhibition in Amsterdam, can be seen in Amsterdam. These are green heart squares which are being made out to launch panels. These are fenders in green heart which we have put up. These are another set of big log gates which are almost completed in one of our machining sheds in the Netherlands. Log gates is one of the main products we produce here. I think Wijma is the biggest log gate producer in hardwood in Europe. It requires quite a bit of craftsmanship and experience, but we have a lot of experience in that. All the pictures you have seen so far are about azobe, which is the timber species I mentioned before. It is classified in the strength category D70, and there's only one timber species which matches that, and that is Demerara greenheart. So obviously we are interested in buying greenheart, and that is also what we do. Next, please. These are the countries from which we export. The bulk comes from Gabon and Cameroon, and the smaller volumes come from Guyana and Suriname. It's a lot of the products we buy are squares, as well as from Suriname as from Guyana, but we also do other products like decking. Yeah, it's some of the passes are planed, but the majority is just rough sawn. Next, please. This is a traditional product in the south of England. It's called groin. Most people probably know what it is. They are to protect the shores from the waves and from erosion. And they are generally constructed out of standard sections like 3x9, 4x9 as a planking, and for example the 12x12s as a square. And next, please. This is one of the machining halls where we make our bridges and log gates. In this case, you see a big bridge being built. This is the start of the construction, and on the next screen you will see the next phase, which is, as you can see, enormous girders, two enormous girders, which have been constructed. So once again, all the timber has been cut in Cameroon, or in Gabon. In this case, it was Gabon. And all the machining has been prepared here in one of the sheds, mainly by the CNC machines, and the assembling is being done right here. Next, please. Here you see the whole structure ready for transport. Immediately after, well, a few meters behind this construction, there is a canal which connects to a river, and the river connects us to all parts of the Netherlands and Belgium and Germany, etc. So the transport was already quite a big thing, as you can imagine. But happily, we have this water infrastructure, canal infrastructure, which helps us to distribute our products in various countries. Next, please. This is another big picture of a big bridge, also ready to be transported. This is also for the Netherlands. It is in the south of the Netherlands. It's a huge construction, and it took two of the very big cranes to have it loaded onto a pontoon, and the transport to the end destination went well, and this bridge is in service. Meanwhile, it has been transported to the end destination in the spring of this year. Next, please. This is an example of how we use green heart in the Netherlands. These are used for launch panels for the launch of boring platforms, drilling platforms in the North Sea, and they are being pre-drilled, chamfered, planed. The actual size, the finished size is very, very important. The tolerances are minimum. They are about plus and minus 1 millimeter, which is for such a size, of course, very, very small. But we are used to this type of work, so it does not create a problem. Next, please. This is one of the log gates which we have made in green heart. We have done a couple of them, a few for the Netherlands and a couple for the UK. So it shows that green heart is perfectly suitable for these kind of products. Next, please. That's it. So this was my this gives hopefully an impression of what Wijma does in the Netherlands. It showed a lot of products, and it gives also an impression what could be done with green heart when it is machined well and when it is delivered well in a proper quality and a consistent quality. And we are convinced that we can use more green heart, especially when it is FSC certified, which is enormously important for the market over here, since all the big projects in the Netherlands and in Europe, including UK, are specified in FSC nowadays. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Wim. It gives me tremendous joy and pride when I see our green heart timber showcased across the seas, and especially to see those projects in Europe. You know, the hard work of our forest operators in Guyana, many of them do not get the opportunity to see where their timber end up going to. So this was a great opportunity to see how our green heart timber and many other species are going to be displayed and showcased around the world. And even as we go into our session, we're going to be talking more about value added. As you saw in this presentation, you've seen value added to the extreme. So much more to be discussed as we continue. I ask that you also keep in mind your questions. So as the presenters are presenting their companies, think about questions you may want to ask. Those across all the presenters, anyone, the questions are open to our entire audience to the end of we will have about 45 minutes to the end to ask questions. Next, we will go to Andrew Stanigar from Jamaica, who is going to present his company. Proceed, Andrew.
Morning, everyone. Thank you, Rafeek, for your kind introduction. Let me just set up my timer here. Okay, great. And warm greetings from Jamaica. It's a pleasure to be able to participate in this auspicious event. I really do feel honored to be speaking to the people of Guyana and colleagues around the world. And as we say in Jamaica, respect is due to the participating officials of the Guyanese government, other foreign government representatives, officials of the Guyanese forest sector, and various stakeholders and suppliers in the industry, some of whom I've been doing business with for about 10, 15 years. I actually visited Guyana once. It was a beautiful country, and I'm looking forward to coming back soon. I founded Spectrum over 20 years ago, and we have become the largest distributor of roofing products and systems. One of the systems we offer is Guyanese Wallaby shingles. The company is, if we could go to the first slide. Our company is headquartered in Kingston on Spanish Town Road, which is the major commercial thoroughfare. And this is where we conduct our manufacturing activities, which include metal roofing panels, tracks and studs, and various other types of construction materials. It's also the head of our corporate office and our main warehousing facility. Next slide. We also have a warehouse in Manchester, which is central Jamaica, which serves, of course, the whole center of the island. And next slide. We also have a warehouse in Montego Bay, which is in western Jamaica. Montego Bay is the tourism capital of Jamaica. And so that is where you have most of the major resorts who are our biggest customers for Guyanese products, including timber. So we also have fairly extensive warehousing capability in that area. Next slide. Now this is brand new. We've just secured a lease on the Port of Kingston for a 5-acre property, which has a huge amount of warehousing, which dramatically expands our storage capacity and our ability to handle a significant increase in business, hopefully from Guyana. It also has a private port. So I'm looking forward at some point to be able to bring in shiploads of lumber from Guyana. That is hopefully going to materialize within a year. But we are now set to take business to a whole different level in Jamaica. Next slide. So this is some of the lumber we've been importing, fairly wide range, predominantly green heart, which works pretty much any application, but Ipe, Kumaru, Locust, and the others indicated. We bring in multiple sizes and finishes, and our leading product is still Wallaby shingles, where we bring in several containers a year. Next slide. Now, the question of value added has come up, and I know we will be discussing that in this session. And these are some of the value added products that we've brought in from Guyana. I've not sold a lot yet because I've not given it the focus that I need to, but this is what we would consider in the Jamaican market to be value added products. And that includes picnic benches, other artistic pieces, and gazebos made from green heart or darina. We really are planning to focus on this more and do a lot more business where that is concerned. I think I'm out of time, so next slide. These are some of the roofs we've done with Wallaba shingles. This is the historic Devon House facility. It's a few hundred years old. We've done a lot of Wallaba shingle business in Jamaica, and that's growing. Next slide. I have done here a brief comparison. I know I'm out of time, but there is a segment of the market which is really for the low-cost timber, which of course is dominated by pine. And so this provides a rough comparison with the cost of pine and the cost of hardwoods. Next slide. That's it. If you want more details on the company, you can go to spectrumroof.com. Thank you all.
Thank you, Andrew. I've gotten to know Andrew over the years. He's very ambitious in plans, and he's really seeking to grow even more. And you know what many do not know is that the Caribbean represent a much greater part of our market share than the data would show. I would venture to say the Caribbean presently will be at least 50% of our value-added products demand in the region. Many of those numbers are skewed because you may be seeing products from Guyana coming into the United States, but those products are being diverted after it comes into the US, re-exported into the Caribbean. While Europe represents about 20 to 30% of the market share, and North America may represent about maybe 15 to 20%, we do find the Caribbean continuing to grow. The Caribbean also, what we find is that many of our Caribbean islands do not really know of Guyana's products as much. So these types of opportunities will hopefully make more and more awareness. If, because of our limited time, we could have actually brought many others from other Caribbean islands, such as Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, that will actually be a testimonial to us about the potentials within the region. During this session, though, we're going to be discussing some of the challenges, and Andrew is going to be sharing some of those challenges that we find in the region and obstacles to growth. Next, I will like to bring on Malcolm from New Zealand. Go right ahead. Malcolm, I hope you've had your coffee and staying awake. No sleeping. It is probably, tell us the time, by the way. Go ahead.
Yes, it's my dog is particularly concerned that everything's so bright at the moment. Hello from New Zealand, and I'm delighted to contribute what I can to the discussions. And thank you, Rafeek, for your wonderful leadership that we've been privileged to be part of for the last 10 or 15 years. New Zealand is dominated by radiata pine, so imports for specialty hardwoods is very specifically purchased with end users in mind, where there needs to be particular care taken in terms of grading, in terms of the accuracy of the cut and of timeliness. My slide presentation is going to indicate some of the product ranges which Guyana might aspire to, but also show some of the utilization where the likes of Green Heart and Purple Heart have been exceptionally well received and appreciated by the New Zealand buyers. So next slide, please. I think we can go straight past that slide. Here we go into the exterior cladding examples, dominated again by radiata pine, but much of what we do is from softwoods manufacture of exterior cladding using Western red cedar from Canada, but also thermally modified softwoods, thermally modified radiata pine, Pinus sylvestris from Europe, and Alaskan yellow cedar, also Iroko. So I think we'll go on to the next slide. A little close up there of a simple board and batten profile. You can see that the claddings are all coated by paint or stains manufactured in New Zealand for the quite harsh New Zealand conditions where we have considerable UV, ultraviolet light, which is very tough on timbers. We also have a relative humidity that changes dramatically in our little thin country. We go from say 46% through to 95, 100% within hours. So it's very tough on timber. So stability is very critical for some of these end users. Next slide, please. We have our own planer facilities, of course. And in situations like this, we need high quality kiln drying. We can make anything in our plant using our own kilns, bandsaws, and planer molders. So we have a lot of flexibility in what we can buy, and we're very versatile. We just need the very good feedstock. So we're looking for simply, probably our requirements are very simple. We need the accuracy of the cut. We need the well kiln dried or the well air dried, and reliability and grade. And then we can do anything. Okay, next slide, please. Here we show some vertical and horizontal weatherboards with the variety of finishes: bandsawn finish, dressed finishes, brushed finishes. Next slide, please. This is showing a typical resort hotel. New Zealand is a very popular place to come these days, and we have a lot of hotels in fairly remote areas and amongst our mountains. And here we are using the hardwood decking, tropical hardwood decking, heavy in 140 and 140 millimeter widths, 19 mils thick, 21 mil thick. You can see it's quite a way to fall, so it has to be high quality. And for this, we would use Purple Heart very, very comfortably. Thank you. Next slide. More cladding using our own techniques. We brush or spray these surface coatings on. There's a fashion at the moment for dark colors, again requiring species that are particularly stable and that take finishes well. So we're not looking for oily species, looking for quite dry species. Thank you. Next slide. Thank you. We have very strict building codes. Here is a certificate, a third-party certificate by Codemark. There is a lot of government involvement, building industry involvement in setting standards. We have high winds and quite a bit of rain, so we have to build to exacting requirements of our building codes. So as in Wim's product range, great care has to be taken in terms of accuracy. Thank you. Next slide. This is a somewhat whimsical one, charcoal finish on this case. So here we have a cute design, inspired just to be different. It's charred, but we also do oiled, painted, and different brushed faces and the likes. So appearance is key in this case. Next slide. I think this is just indicating some of the finishings that we do. We have an old saying, hope is good, but control is better. And in this case, we can, in our case, we can control what we do once we've got the timber landed in New Zealand. We can basically manage the product quality right through to the final finish. Next slide, please. An example here of a thermally modified product. The grade off finish on the left. But it comes in extraordinary lengths, all 5.4s. So it's ideal for the New Zealand type of construction, which is heavily wood-based and would be ideal for, as an ideal market for the Guyanian products. We wish you could grow something similar to the Western red cedar from Canada. We're always looking for alternatives. But we are softwood, very softwood orientated. People don't like lifting big, heavy weatherboards. They much prefer the lighter. The builders are getting a bit lazy, and they like to use lighter materials which are easier to apply. Next slide, please. Here we are into the hardwood decking, which was a significant part of our business, domestic decking. Here we're buying well-produced heavy hardwoods. We're looking for a fair length average, a fair spread of lengths. We're looking for accuracy in the cut, which requires good, careful handling from the exporter's end to maintain straightness. And we're keen to maintain biosecurity standards as well. So quite often we have to heat sterilize or fumigate, and we're trying to minimize that at the present time. On the left here is some, what I think is Purple Heart. It might have grayed off a little. We use heavy structural hardwoods for bridges, sleepers, wharves, and the likes. So the Green Heart poles that we buy have been welcomed, and for heavy industrial wharf decking, Green Heart, Purple Heart, ideal. Next slide, please. Here we have inch Western red cedar being dried by us. And you can see we don't have our concrete weights on top of those particular packets, but we aim to keep those boards straight, because the standard value of a home in New Zealand is over $1 million now. So people have very high expectations of wood products, and that starts from the minute that log goes onto the pony saws. Okay, next slide. It starts with Guyana. In some hardwood decking here that you can see. I think I'm over time, I suspect. You can see just different applications in New Zealand. Wharf decking. This was a little example of a Lucas saw where we have from the Solomon Islands, where we buy a lot of timber that is community cut. We're very supportive of Indigenous communities. It's part of what we do, and it's almost a bit of outreach. And you can see we're cutting Vitex here, logs that barged across and go through some of these smaller portable saws. There in the Solomons, there are one or two slightly larger operations, but most of what we buy has gone through these mini saws. So we buy from big sawmills and we buy from tiny ones. Thank you. Next slide. Oh, that looks like it might be the end. So thank you for the opportunity to talk, and maybe we can all work together to promote the use of timber around sustainable timber throughout the world. Just as an add-on, I'm the chair of the New Zealand Imported Timber Trade Group. We're an environmental interface between the timber industry, timber importers, green NGOs, including Greenpeace, and the government. I've chaired that for the last 10 or 12 years. And in New Zealand, it is essential that your exports are FSC or PEFC certified. There's a huge awareness of that here. So thank you, Guyana, for what you do. Thank you, Rafeek, for all that you represent. I must say that when you buy from afar, from the distance, you need to trust the exporter. And in that regard, Rafeek has been exemplary. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Malcolm, for your kind words. And I'm blown away always when I see and look at the type of products that you produce and that is being produced in New Zealand. While many of these products may not represent products from Guyana, and the presentation would have been longer than the others, I thought it was very, very beneficial to me and hopefully to you to see where we could be in years from now, to understand the options that are available out there. Our market, there's major changes in our market, the desire for taste, quality, looks. As you can see, who would think someone would want a wood that looking black, the buildings looking gray. So I would encourage you even later on, just ask questions and look at trying to learn more about where we could go in value added. That is the extreme of value added, but it doesn't mean that we cannot be part of the chain, part of the process. As Malcolm explained, their company and Wijma and actually Andrew's company and Jamaica and many other companies that are doing further processing, we could be part of that supply chain as value added. Value added is, it could just be the rough sawn timber as the primary stage of value added. And then it goes more into the further processing. So it is important, and we're going to learn during these sessions some of the challenges that they may have been facing in buying from Guyana. Without any further ado, I would like to open now the panel for all four of us to talk together about some questions. I'm going to take the next 20-25 minutes, ask each of you questions on our panel. Please feel comfortable to answer, including the listeners, viewers. Please take time to send your questions in. I see questions are coming in. So right after my questions to the panelists, we're going to read your questions to the panelists. So I'll read all four questions and then we'll go one by one. And by me reading the four questions, will give you the opportunity to know what questions I will be asking. The first question is going to be, what factors influence your sourcing decision for our products? Second question, how would you define value-added products in your market? Third question, do you source value-added products from Guyana? Why and why not? Apart from Guyana, which other countries do you source timber from? How competitive is Guyana to your other source countries? So with no further ado, please, gentlemen, I would like to direct this question to each of you, starting with Wim. Wim, what factors influence your sourcing decision for our products?
First of all, for us, it is the utilization, the suitability of the product for of the timber species, so to speak, for the intended product. For instance, if you want to build a construction which is consisting out of several sizes, you're going to look what sizes are specified and in which strength. So there are several strength categories. which play in one product an important role, and in another product it could be of less importance. So you look at the product, and then you look at the possibilities. What does the market offer? If you have then narrowed the choice down to maybe, for example, Azabay from Africa and Greenheart from Guyana, you look, of course, also at the price. Now, the price is something to compare Azabay from Africa with Greenheart from Guyana. You can make that comparison, but this comparison will change all the time. It depends on the currency, so the rate of the US dollar versus the euro, which has been changing quite a bit in the past few years. Also, the sea freight can form and will form an important part of the cost price. So you look at all of these things in order to make a decision. And then, of course, you look at the possibilities to have a good quality product with limited dimensional tolerances, liability in delivery time, etc., etc., and also the required delivery time. So you compare those to each other. It's difficult to just explain this in a few words, but at least you have an idea what we at least would be looking at.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Wim, for those. And there are many factors that influence your sourcing decision, I'm sure. Andrew, can I point it to you? What specific factors you think for the Caribbean and specifically Jamaica that influence your decision-making process?
Well, there is market demand, particularly in the tourism sector, for high durability woods, primarily for external applications. So down by their docks or external walkways and other outdoor structures. Also things like furniture that goes outside in a resort area. So the demand is coming primarily from the tourism sector, including resorts and guest houses. There is more widespread demand for Wallaba, which goes into the non-tourist sector. So for people who desire a wood roof, Wallaba is a very cost-effective option or alternative to cedar. Not necessarily because it's that much cheaper, but because it lasts a lot longer. So that is where the demand comes from. Admittedly, because of the pricing, Guyanese hardwoods are afforded only by the very affluent. So it is a niche product, and it accounts for a very small percentage of the overall timber imports into Jamaica.
Thank you, Andrew. So we've heard a couple of points there in terms of decision influencing, and I would like to capture it into two types of consumer. We have, Andrew mentioned, the tourism market. What Wim and what the presentation that Malcolm would have shown you captured the hydraulic, the engineer, the commercial market, the municipalities and governments that are specifying our products. Not many consumers are end users, homeowners, and so on, but that's a market that we need to be growing gradually. So primarily, you're going to see these companies here represented are going to be talking about products that have gone into both municipality and the tourism industry for heavy and light construction, both alike. Malcolm, is there any specific factors you would wish to add to what you've already mentioned that could influence your sourcing decision to buying more from Guyana? For example, I saw so many products that you're buying from other countries. Canada, I see you buy cedar, I see you buy from Africa, you buy from other countries. We need some of your business. What is it that we can do to earn your business in Guyana?
Look, I I think Wim hit the right note there, that it is very species orientated. There are some very specific niche markets for your products. And I suppose that the decking market in New Zealand has bought heavily from Indonesia, which is only 9 days away in terms of shipping, as opposed to, 35, 40 days. So the availability of fast transit times is helpful, but I do believe there is a good opportunity for Guyana to be producing machined decking products. That seems the obvious one to us, where you would manufacture 140 by 19, 115 by 19, reeded one face, plain on the backs. That is a specific niche market. To get more of the market, I'm quite sure it comes down to quality and price, and just having a marketing budget that where trade a small trade delegations coming to meet key industry leaders in wharf manufacture and piling. That's an effective method of marketing, I must say.
Thank you, Malcolm. And for the benefit of all, Guyana's export last year, 2019, was only 37 million. While we have a very diverse forest mix and amazing durable timber species, we quite understand that it is a niche, but at the same time, we really need to grow our export from Guyana. So as you can imagine, 37 million, you can pick, I can pick 5 companies in Miami or anywhere in Europe that could do that per year, right? Each of them. Of the 37 million, we have about 30% of that went towards log export in 2019. And the rest was other sawn products and so on. And we want to see that trend continuing, whereby we see more sawn timber and less log export. My next question would be, how would you define value-added products in your market? And I will take that question to Andrew. Andrew, how would you define, you got to unmute there, Andrew. How would you define value-added in your market, Jamaica?
Rafeek, I showed you, well, in my presentation, we showed you some pictures of what those products, some of what those products would look like. Really nice, durable furniture for indoor and outdoor use, gazebos, picnic benches, things like that. That is where I think you could increase your exports. Obviously, a number of these things could also be locally manufactured here in Jamaica, but it might be more convenient for some, and it would be for me also, to just import the finished product. We've imported gazebos in sections. Not sold many of them, but you basically just bring in the sections, sell them to someone, and they have their own carpenter build a base and assemble it, and they look really beautiful. So that is how I would define value added.
Yes, and value added could be it could mean different depending on who you're speaking to. In Guyana, we somewhat think value added in our export data shows, if you were to look value added the products you're talking about, we are doing 2% or less in value added in the perspective of furniture or higher prefabricated components or products. I would like to encourage my colleagues and those within the sector that value added does not have to be the extreme. As you see the products that Wijma is buying, the products that JSC they're buying, we can be part of that chain. And value added is you cut that tree, that's the unprocessed log, and then you convert that, your first cut, into a timber that goes into Europe or wherever it is. That is value added. So rough sawn is a part of adding value to that timber. So while we may not have the opportunity to do the further processing as you're seeing in the expectations, there we can be part of that chain. I would like to move to the next question. Do you source value-added products from Guyana? Why and why not? And I'm going to direct that question to Wim. I know, Wim, your company take Guyana's rough sawn green heart. You may do some very simple things to it, and you add extreme value to it, which increases not just the value of the perception value of the product, but the dollar value of that product. So if you don't mind unmuting your microphone there, and I believe you're muted, Wim, and if you can answer that question, why not do some value added in Guyana?
Yeah, that's a logical question in the light of the discussion so far. There are a few things which are deciding on that. We, for example, stock a lot of squares in our yard in the Netherlands, and when we get a particular order in, the building contractor sometimes specifies that he wants a particular square or a parcel of squares to be machined. So it could be drilled, it could be chamfered, it could be otherwise shaped or pointed. And of those quick orders, we do not know in advance what kind of machining is required. So there is a part of the added value orders which always will have to be done from the Netherlands for the reasons I just explained. For other orders, it would be possible to have it done in Guyana, and we have done that in the past as well. We did some orders for hydraulic constructions whereby we ordered the timber with certain grooves or even squares. We have asked for sleepers which were drilled. We have done other piles or squares which were pointed. So it is actually quite possible to do that, but not every exporter is really prepared to do it or is able to do it. So it is a matter of the capacity which is there, and then to make use of it.
Thank you, Wim. I would like to take that question as well to Malcolm. Malcolm, your company is using a significant amount of products. And I think in our earlier discussion, you kind of told me why you're not buying further processed or finished products in Guyana. So some of the products I saw were kiln-dried machine products that we have the capabilities of doing in Guyana. I would even say that some of the products that you're doing, that siding on buildings, board and batten, and those types of profile, we have molders in Guyana that could do those products. And I'm not trying to be difficult. I've just asked you that question to hopefully provoke some thoughts here. Why not give us the opportunity to make the finished product in Guyana, such as basic decking, siding? You can unmute your microphone and proceed.
The answer is that in terms of domestic high finish, high quality decking, there is no reason why Guyana can't take quite an aggressive stance there. You would be competing with Indonesia, who are very effective. But New Zealand buys something in the order of 60 or 70 containers a month of product. Our own company used to import 25 or 30 containers per month of exterior decking. There is a major market both here and in Australia for finished decking. So there's huge capacity there. There's no reason why that couldn't happen. But the reason that we buy rough sawn timber is that with a relatively modest volume, we've got many options. So when we've got a piece of rough sawn timber, we can convert that into, say, 10 different products. Whereas if we buy a fixed product, we can't convert it into anything but what it is. So it would have to be limited to an item where we sell substantial volume, and that is definitely decking or square dressed boards. For us, value added is dryness. We want those options for our own manufacturing facility, and we will hunt down well-produced, that's dimensionally accurate, well-presented, fair length product that is well seasoned or kiln dried. For us, the drying is critical. We are buying the right species for the right job. We will hunt down Purple Heart, Green Heart. I think Wallaba has got legs here. I think some of the Angelums and Vermellos, I'm sure there are other species that we need to become more familiar with. So for us, kiln drying is probably going to be the most significant value-added aspect that we're looking for, but the decking profile business is an obvious starter, and it would develop from there.
Thank you, Malcolm. I must say, it took this long and this panel for me to understand that question, because for a while I was a bit frustrated with trying to promote further value added into facilities such as yours. And not until you told me what you just said, I'll recap some of the words, but the gist is that you have customers are going to be picking and choosing options that if we were to cut those into all different options that your customers are going to be looking for, we're going to be really wasting more of the wood. So a customer comes in is going to be asking for various options. Go ahead.
Well, we would need Andrew's warehouse. I mean, we haven't got that. I mean, we have warehouses, but with a relatively modest amount of timber, we can create a myriad of different products. So we're more specifically looking for a species and a timber size that will give us the flexibility we need to specialize and specially make for particular jobs, much as Wim does, I suspect, for his different lock gates. Every architect has a different profile, a different finish, a different length spec, a different width spec. So we need the basic kiln-dried product from which we can then develop the market.
Excuse me, maybe I may add to this a few words, because I completely agree what Malcolm just said. We also do decking, but for your information, there is a development in the Netherlands that there have been that the responsibility for accidents happening on decking could have major effects. So what has been happening in Europe for the past 5 to 10 years is that there are several anti-slip systems have been developed and also are being applied at the moment. And those systems need special grooves or special machines to have them prepared to receive such anti-slip systems. And these systems, they change all the time. It's not one system. So that means that if you receive a decking with a certain pattern, with a certain grooves, so to speak, then you have to, this timber which is ready to go and ready to be installed, you have to put it through the planer again, which makes it very, very expensive, and it does not make the quality of the timber any better. So this is another reason why it is difficult to import decking which is already made. It is much easier in that case to supply at least a part of this product rough sawn.
Thank you, Wim. And Malcolm mentioned a lot in his conversation about seasoned timber, kiln drying. Andrew, what is your experience with timber that you would have purchased from Guyana? Any concerns with value added, you making the finished products and buying seasoned timber from Guyana or even finished products? I know you've had some experiences there you wish to share.
If you want to go in the direction of exporting value-added products, they have to be properly kiln dried. Because once you cut into that square and produce a finished product, you can't have it warping or twisting. Because by the time it gets to your customer, it's unsaleable. So we've had some measure of inconsistency with the level of kiln drying that has been done. We've gotten in 1 or 2 shipments where we had some pallets, once you pull them, the boards just start to twist. And that is a huge problem for us. Our customers don't accept that. So you need consistent standards and rigidly applied standards with kiln drying lumber. We've also very rarely received shipments with wormholes in the lumber and other defects, which again, customers don't want to touch. So what is clear is that I think, well, I don't know, maybe you have an industry organization there that does independent auditing of the exports coming out of Guyana to ensure that certain standards of quality are met. That has not been my experience, quite frankly. I've had, a fair amount of variation in the quality of what I've received, even in terms of the dimensioning, the thicknesses and the widths. Customers can be very demanding. And I can show you right now a lot of lumber in my yard, which is basically refuse. We can't sell it. And that's a big loss because it's very expensive. That's a real key issue there, the quality of what you export.
Could I come in here and make a suggestion that a very valuable value-added aspect might be blanking, i.e. skip dressing the rough sawn timber, so where you put it through a 4-sider at a high speed so that it can be dimensioned more accurately and graded more accurately and carefully, where you pick up the bug hole, the pinhole, gum vein, surface checking. I suggested that is a very real way of improving your status throughout the world. Over.
Thank you, Malcolm, for that comment. I appreciate that. And thank you, Andrew, for being comfortable enough to share your reservations with timbers being purchased from Guyana in the future. My last question here, and then we'll open questions to the audience. Apart from Guyana, which other countries do you source timber from, and how competitive is Guyana? So I'll ask that you just take a minute or so, no more than a minute, just to answer that question. Where else do you purchase timber from? And you've mentioned that in your presentation, but let's just go to each one of you and how competitive, and be quite open about this. It's okay. How competitive is Guyana? Where else you buy from? Go ahead. I'll take that question to Wim first. Go ahead, Wim.
Well, I think the best country to compare with is Suriname, because all the products we source from Africa, but the specific product which we order a lot from is the squares from Guyana. We also import other products like decking, etc. But the squares are an important part of it, and the squares can easily be compared with the squares which are coming from Suriname, which you buy in Wamaradam or Basolocus. In Suriname, there's no Demerara green heart. So historically, we have been buying Basolocus from Suriname, and a lot of Basolocus. And to answer that question then, in this respect, is that the price, the buying price in Suriname is roughly depending on the dimensions, 15 to 20, sometimes even 25%. So that means cheaper in Suriname. Now, sometimes a certain project is specifically required in Greenheart because of the strength, the good strength characteristics. So sometimes, even though the price is higher in Greenheart, we buy in Greenheart from Guyana. But to answer the question, yes, Guyana is on the average quite a bit more expensive than the neighboring country, Suriname.
Thank you, Wim. Malcolm, how competitive, for the few products that you do buy from Guyana, how competitive you find Guyana?
The market, the buyers are well aware of the species. So Purple Heart is now so well known that it carries its own, what we say, mana. It carries its own value. There is a high perception of value. So because we are niche marketing, and we're looking for that specific look and that feel, non-oily, Purple Heart doesn't surface check to the same extent as other species. Therefore, because it is so specific, there is no price problem. It is, we would find it to be expensive, but the market will pay it. So it is a premium product, and we are all achieving a premium price. So that is good marketing. And that is what, when you have multiple bush, that's what you've got to do. You've got to find the right market for the right species to achieve the right price. So that's my suggestion there. And so generally speaking, we don't have a price problem because we are specifically selling to a niche market who appreciate the value of the product. But believe you me, it changes, and you have to listen carefully to the market.
Good point, Malcolm. Andrew, how competitive is Guyana? And I know you buy other products from the United States quite a bit. You buy from Canada, but how competitive is Guyana compared to what you've been paying?
I anticipated this question, so I included in my presentation a slide. I did a little research, and it compares the cost of pine to Greenheart. Now, I know that Greenheart is far more durable, and maybe in that sense, it's not really a fair comparison, except for the fact that pine is used in a lot of the same applications that you would use Greenheart. So the cost comparison is reasonable. And if you look at that slide, it shows that Greenheart, similar cuts or comparative cuts, costs over 300% more than pine. That's a huge difference. I've had people who come in who wanted to buy Greenheart, but when they compared it with pine, they said, you know what, we'll buy the pine and maybe have to rebuild that thing every 5 years. So if you're looking at increased market share, then the price is definitely a deterrent to people going with the much higher quality lump timbers from Guyana.
Thank you, Andrew. And I recall Malcolm mentioning that people rather use timber that is lighter and easier to handle. So we do need to find our niche, and we do need to look for those unique markets. It's interesting though, in Guyana, Malcolm, pine is almost the same price as Greenheart in the domestic market because we have an import tariff of 40% in pine. We find a lot of builders are moving towards utilizing pine for general construction. But I agree, I think once we get into identifying certain products and we can produce them, it's all about economies of scale and getting better recovery and yield out of our timber, which causes our products to be higher. But hopefully that we can do better as a country to get more competitive overall. With no further ado, sorry, come again, Mark.
Niche marketing, I think, is the answer.
Absolutely. Niche marketing. I agree. Totally.
If I
And
could
have
ask
that.
Rafeek,
Yes.
I think the way forward may be to identify species not quite as durable as green heart and purple heart, but species that are lower cost, that you can produce in higher volume. Is that a segment of the market that the Guyanese industry is even interested in? That is something you need to look at. But I should tell you that the market for pine in Jamaica, but depending on who you ask, is upwards of $60 million per year, whereas Guyanese lumber is a very tiny fraction of that.
Yeah, good point, Andrew. Alternative species, and that's part of some of the I see some questions coming in already, but very good point in terms of observation there. So let us now go to some questions, and if you're going to bear with me, I'll have to try to read these on a message board here. 1 second here. The first question is coming from Mr. Kenny David for Mr. Wim Hup. Wim, can you say what are some of the other challenges you have with buying from Guyana? I know you've mentioned some, maybe you covered it already, but is there any other challenges that you find that you didn't talk about as yet?
I think first and foremost, the fact that FSC is regarded as really important in Europe. Some people just will not take a product when it is not FSC certified. Now, there are now some possibilities. There are now possibilities for FSC certified products from Guyana. I know this, of course. I also know that the VPA FLEGT program is a program which has been moving forward for the past at least 8 years, maybe 10. A lot of effort is being put in this project, which is of course very good. But the level of FSC or PEFC is really a bit higher in a sense of it is all about sustainable timbers. And what I think of something which might be an idea to consider, there's a lot of effort and money put into the FLEGT program. Of course, it is funded by other countries as well. But why not give a little bit more attention to FSC certification and help companies who want to get FSC certified? So this is only one element. This answer is only one element in the question, but maybe it goes too far to address other elements as well.
Yeah, thank you, Wim. And I'm not as qualified to answer some of these questions, but very valid point. And I would like to see, if possible, that we could have made third-party certification more affordable in Guyana. As you know, FSC is quite expensive and not as easy to achieve. With our VPA and FLEGT initiative here, that hopefully within the next 5 years, we could see some collaboration with third-party inspection agencies that will make it more affordable in Guyana. I would like to respond to a question to Mr. Kenny David, not to my panel here, that he can think about and maybe write in the answer for me. Someone asked a question, in the UK market, the FLEGT is not covered under the UK for furniture products. Within the VPA, we do not have furniture products captured in there. I'm not too sure if that is correct or not, but that is a question from someone who has asked. And if you can think about that and then write in your answer, Kenny, or somehow chirp in and let us know. Now, the next question here is coming from Mohindra Chand. He's from Barama. A question for Andrew Stanigar. Regional shipping rates out of Guyana are not competitive. How do we overcome this?
It's still a relatively small percentage of the value of container load of timber or products. So the difference in freight is not going to be a deciding factor.
Okay, because when large volumes are moving, I think one of the point here is possibly consideration for break bulk cargo. And I noticed you mentioned a port there. So if we were to be able to consolidate cargo and moving from Guyana, such as plywood or more volume products, break bulk vessels could hopefully assist if you have the port facilities to receive larger vessels that will reduce the freight cost. But personally, I have found that the freight cost from Guyana is quite expensive into the region. May not be for Jamaica, but most of the Caribbean.
You have to look at the value of the goods overall, and as a percentage, I mean, that doesn't account for the over 300% difference in costs that we're seeing. So it may be higher, but it's not that much to be a deciding factor. And certainly, if we can find a lower cost way of bringing the timber here, and we now have a facility that we can use for that, then that is something I'd be happy to look at, in particular for plywood. That is something I could move huge volumes of.
I do see another question from Kenny, but that question has already been answered. It's value-added products. How can you expand on that? I'll go to another question here from Neil Chan here for Wim Hup. Should Guyana get niche markets or commodity level markets? Commodity level markets or niche market? And we kind of discussed that in the panel already, but that's a question directed to Wim. In your perspective, should we go after commodity or niche markets?
Yeah, for all specific orders, I think the niche market is, for us in particular, less important than reliability in quality. Having a constant quality, not a quality which varies with each shipment, is for us very vital to be able to count on the shipment. If a shipment arrives and it is not good enough, we have to reject it internally, then we could have a problem by not being able to supply. A part of the quality, in our view, is also the dimensional tolerances. Once you do not dress timber but supply it as rough sawn, and once the timber is not provided not shipped in the correct dimensions, then you may end up with a problem. And I think that if these 2 points which I just mentioned would be addressed and would be in order and would be of a good quality, then I think it is already for us, it would be considered as a major achievement and for us more important than going into a niche market.
Thank you. For our audience, please continue to send your questions in. I have been mentioning names of the persons who are sending the questions. I'm going to stop mentioning the names. I wasn't told to do that, but I just thought about it. Just in case you're shy about your questions or you have reservations, I'm not going to mention the names. I'll just mention who the question is to be addressed to. So please continue to send your questions. No one should be feeling shy to ask questions here. The other question here, let me see.
I could add something to the ocean freight. The ocean freight discussion. One way of minimizing or reducing the cost of ocean freight is to actually load the containers more effectively, so that you achieve good stowage. So the price per cubic meter will fall if you can load the container fully.
Thank you, Malcolm. And I would like to encourage our buyers to also, when you order lengths that will allow us to fill the containers and maximize it. So random length orders are always good in helping us to get better freight rates and so on. but the capacity in terms of filling that container is very, very important. The other question here comes from, can the panel provide an update on the status of the consolidated log yard the government intended to establish to aid in this regard? This is probably not a question for you. You may not know it, but this will be a question for myself from the audience. The log yard, what this is, the government of Guyana has an initiative that we have undertaken to be able to buy logs from various suppliers around the country, consolidate it, and make it available for our general market. Because of our limited and poor infrastructure, we find many of our producers are having challenges bringing raw material on a timely basis and also getting paid on a timely basis. So one of the reasons why we see the consolidated log yard as an important mechanism is to be able to facilitate the trade and make it easier. Eventually, we could very well look at having a consolidated stockyard for dimensional timber, whereby you as a potential buyer can actually just call that center and get have options. So we have a study to answer the question directly. We have a study that is ongoing that has just been initiated by the FAO, by GMSA, funded by the FAO. And this study is going to allow us to see how feasible it is for the government to engage in having a stockyard in Guyana. So the other question here that I'm going to move to, this question is, how much effort has been put into the outreach of non-markets to promote the VPA implementation process for partner countries? How much effort has been put into outreach to promote VPA implementation? Now, this is not a question for any of you, but I will love for someone to answer this question from the GFC, for Mr. Kenny David. I don't know, could you come in and then maybe answer the other question with regards to furniture? Can we bring Kenny in via audio? Is this possible?
Hi. Sorry, I didn't quite catch the second question.
Okay, the second question was how much effort has been done or being done for the VPA implementation process in partner countries? And let me just read a further comment there. We're always looking for ways to keep North America importers advised on the VPA implementation progress. So we just want to have an update of how much progress has been made.
I think the VPA process itself, maybe not enough has been done, but I think in terms of promoting the VPA as such, but I think what we have done, however, is sort of promoted what the VPA is seeking to achieve, and so we have talked in discussion with other countries as it relates to, you know, an improving of standards and quality and some of the other things that the VPA will bring to the sector. And I think a lot of what we're hearing as well from the panel, which I think is a wonderful panel, by the way. I think it's, you know, we have, and I think I mentioned this yesterday, that we have been trying or in the VPAs in trying in areas also trying to improve the quality of the products that we have been bringing. So I do think the comment is a useful one. Maybe greater effort needs to be made in that regard, maybe specifically with the VPA. But what is certainly being done and certainly can improve as well is the idea that the VPA will improve tracking and tracing of timber sustainability, you know, what it's seeking to achieve at a broader level. Those aspects, I think, are already being promoted, but I think certainly more can be done. I think the other question had to do with
furniture into UK.
Furniture into I think, I mean, while the, you know, for us, the discussion or the decision to not have furniture as part of the list of products, at that time, you know, when the implementation work group sort of looked at the tracing and because the tracking and tracing was an important aspect of the VPA, and I think it was recognized at that time, and I say that time because obviously it was some years ago, at that time, because a lot of products were being assembled and people were buying specific components from specific suppliers. It made tracking and tracing a bit challenging. And we felt that because we wanted the VPA again, and of course the VPA offered the possibility that, let's say, within 5 years or 7 years, we could revisit the list of products. It was felt at that time that it made sense to get the VPA going in that sense, if I can put it that way. So for the products we were sure we could easily track and trace, in that sense, coming into the supply chain, it made sense to get that going. And then when we go back or we revisit the agreement, we could then look at, do we want to add furniture? And and it's clear from the discussions as well that furniture is one of those things that I think in our next revisiting of the VPA, we're going to have to look at including that. But again, we needed to be absolutely sure that we could have traced. Efforts have been made in terms of improving tracing and tracking, and I think we've learned a lot too, Rafeek, if I may say. In those initial stages of the VPA, when we were discussing, what we could track, it was maybe short-sighted, or whatever. But it's like there was so much to learn for us as well. And I think, but now a few years that you begin to realize that because the systems are seeking to ensure what is coming to various entities, and we are developing the system to track and trace a lot more efficiently and effectively, you begin to realize that whatever is coming further down, in that sense, further downstream, so even if persons are cutting and making various components, because you're now going to have greater assurance of the legality of what is coming to those entities, ultimately what's coming from the forest in that sense, then it makes tracking and tracing, I think, furniture products a little easier. But certainly that initial approach was to try to ensure we could get a VPA going in as quick a shorter time as possible. Don't think we've managed to really hit that exactly as we planned, but we're still hoping to do that in a not too distant future.
Thank you very much, Kenny. Don't go. Keep Kenny in the panel. I need all the help I can for some of these questions coming in. I have a question here for Wim. Wim, if you can go ahead and unmute. This is going to be I won't say a challenging question, but I'll read it to you. We heard Ambassador Quinn yesterday mention about the timber procurement policy on Greenheart. As you know, Wim, there has been restriction into Greenheart, into the UK for Greenheart, and it has to be FSC certified, as you know, or some type of certification. But yesterday, Ambassador Quinn mentioned that the policy on Greenheart and timber in general from Guyana, there is a restriction. What are your views on this issue? Do you see any double standards or parallel processes being enforced? That's the question.
You mean double in the sense of measuring with two measurements, or do you mean a difference in countries, continental Europe with UK, or?
But, well, I would think in general, the view here is that on one side, the UK has been buying probably in Europe in general. You may not be the best person for this because you're not in the UK, but nevertheless, what we find is that the restriction of timber going into the UK, and this was a sudden change about 2 to 3 years ago, whereby only FSC timber, not even FLEGT, any other initiative or even EUTR is accepted into the UK.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
but I can comment on that. I mean, although I'm in Holland, we do know the UK market. We have a UK office, so we are dealing. I'm in daily contact with this office. So what you said is I'm aware of that. I think it comes down to the following. In Europe as a whole, on the continent, people officially do not, or the big projects, which I said earlier on, are always specified in FSC. And why is this? Because the people, the governmental people responsible for such a project don't want to be faced with protests from NGOs like Greenpeace, So in order to avoid that and to defend their position high up, they specify it as FSC, because for them that is the easiest thing to do, or PEFC for that matter. But it is not an official law here in that sense, because people are free to also accept non-FSC certified timbers or non-PEFC. In England, though, you have a governmental body who has said, okay, look, we are going to spend our government money only on timber which is FSC certified, because then we know for sure that it is sustainable harvested. And of course, we all know that Guyana has done a lot on sustainable harvesting to take precautions on sustainable harvesting, but it is very difficult to independently prove that without a certificate, and that is more or less where the UK government body are coming from.
Thank you, Wim, for answering that question. My next question goes to Malcolm. Malcolm, is not bedtime yet, so just bear with us a few more minutes and we'll be closing.
That's right.
Okay, question for you, Wim. Sorry, Malcolm. Given that you're interested in PFC, PEFC, what are your views on VPA as a tool?
My opinion on VPA is that it is an important beginning, but it is not sufficient on its own to allow us to proceed with a purchase. FLEGT, VPA, very essential to ensure that the base legality is there, and the building up of any supportive regulation in terms of the extraction and the movement of timber. But as Wim was saying, the attitude of the UK government is paralleled in New Zealand, where government procurement, where metropolitan procurement, and indeed the NZITTG, the Imported Tropical Timber Group that I represent, the New Zealand industry has supported VPAs, but without third-party verification for legality and or sustainability. Without that, we cannot purchase tropical species. In fact, I very much hope that the government of Guyana fully support third-party certification groups such as FSC and PEFC. We see FSC and PEFC as joint partners in the hope that we can, with them, we can achieve maximum, or that the Guyanese people can achieve maximum market access, but only with third-party verification. So VPA, FLEGT, all those initiatives are crucial and critical. But we have to work as a government NGO partnership to achieve market access. That's the name of the game, I'm afraid, and we support it fully.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. And that is such an important point, because we are needing markets, and this session is all about talking about the barriers to trade. This is a major barrier to trade, and we're looking at two of the largest market for Guyana timber products, and that is the UK and New Zealand in particular, who do appreciate our timber. They do have niche and unique markets that we're talking about, but the major hindrance is certification. And I am hoping that one day we can have some, hopefully, an affordable level of certification. Kenny, do you wish to comment on that with regards to some hopes of affordable certification or third party?
We have actually started some discussions already in terms of, and that's why I think that question may have been from myself to Malcolm. So I think it's good to hear that that the VPA is still beneficial. And I think so. We have actually started the discussion in country to look at how does these certification scheme, particularly FSC, PFC, stack up against the VPA, and just how much more will have to be done or for stakeholders to be able to achieve that level of certification. But I think the point is well made, and for us as a country, that if we can bring stakeholders to that level, because one of the things we've been hearing, and maybe some of the others who are buying from Guyana, is we've already been hearing that even from some of the guys who have been dealing with FSC, they say that what the systems that exist in country have actually allowed, even minus the VP, have allowed certification schemes for those who are actually able to produce FSC lumber. That it's actually made it a lot easier for them. So for us, it's actually quite encouraging that the VPA will add to that, and I think it ultimately brings us a lot closer to that certification, FSC, PFC. I think for us as well, the discussion, and it's good because we are also hearing, and I think we need to engage with the EU in a deeper way, trying to understand, and for I think both sides to understand that there is still a gap, because I think often what happens is when we talk about it, we sort of ignore or don't quite understand just how wide that gap is, and we're going to have to fix it if we're going to really sort of benefit from this whole agreement, in a much more meaningful sort of national way in that sense.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We have about 10 more minutes to wrap up our session, and I know we're running out of time. We have 2 more questions here from the audience, and then we will close with some takeaways. But I don't want to be rushing. I feel I'm being rushed in a sense, but I want to respect your time. But I encourage those who are sending in questions to continue to send your question. The Guyana Forestry Commission, the FLEGT Secretariat will be happy to answer questions, those that I'm not capable of answering. And even you can send me questions later on and I can get it directly to these gentlemen. 2 questions here I would like to ask. One, Guyana has quite a good number of lesser used species that are durable species that need further promotion. What can be done to promote these species? Also learning from other countries. So I would like to take that question to Malcolm. Malcolm, you've had experiences with the Fiji Islands, you mentioned, and some other countries. Is there any experiences you think that Guyana can learn from to promote our lesser used species?
The answer is yes. For instance, I showed you those slides of Vitex coming from Solomon Islands. Now, Vitex is probably only 4 or 5% of the bush, but it is a perfect little species as an exterior decking. And our company, for instance, would import something like 8 to 10 boxes per month of Vitex, which is that. So if you have the right species, even if it is a quite small volume, if you can pinpoint it, extract it, and prepare it for export, blanking it, making it the right width and thickness and lengths, then as a minor species, it may be perfectly acceptable to a particular niche market.
Thank you, Malcolm. And I would say a question here would be pointed to Guyana, but Kenny's on the phone at the moment. The question would be, what are we doing when it comes to the promotion from Guyana with those lesser used species? And I think I've seen efforts before being made, and I can pick some of these species such as Mora, Darina, and so on. Kenny, you're back. You can unmute. I have a question for you, Kenny.
Sure.
Yeah, part of the question was, what are we doing to promote our lesser used species in Guyana? Because there are some unique niche markets, and we have many lesser used species that the world doesn't know about.
Thanks, Rafeek. I think it's a great question. Maybe certainly allow me to say a lot more can be done. I think while we recognize that there is a market, I think even in country, one of the challenges we've had, and I think the government has recently highlighted an initiative where they're going to start promoting it as well, even at the local level, you know, for some of the ministries and agencies that are using timber to allow for its local consumption. I think even locally we have struggled with, you know, you're still competing with a sort of more traditional species. One of the things I think we require support for, and this is something we're actually quite aggressively looking to have, is to do a bit more research into these species and what are some of the best applications and so on. So some is known, granted, but I think a lot more can be done and should be done. I heard one of the panelists mention as well. I think maybe we, you know, I think what needs to happen is a lot more aggressive marketing. I think we have struggled in that regard in terms of marketing. We are making efforts even now, but as I said, I think a lot of it is being pushed even at the local level. But I think aggressive marketing is something we're going to have to do a lot more of, and maybe some of these gentlemen can assist in that regard. But yes, and I think as Malcolm made an interesting point earlier about, you know, maybe, you know, green heart, the green heart pine comparison, which I found quite interesting until he came back and explained, you know, what it means in that sense, that people are, you know, still look at, maybe I can use pine and replace it in a short time, and I'm still sort of better off in that sense. But I think what was interesting is it at least highlighted the point that we could do and should do a lot more with some of the lesser known species by way of promoting. So while some is being done, there are actually efforts and plans to do a whole lot more, both locally and abroad, in terms of that aggressive marketing aspect.
Thank you, Kenny. And a follow-up question to that. As you know, we have in excess of 21 common species in Guyana, and we find just maybe a handful of species, green heart, purple heart, and so on, mora, wallaba, are being exported in a commercial scale.
Yeah.
Is there any possibilities or plans on the way for testing these species, these lesser used species, and its properties for structural applications? Because I find that the potential buyers will not take the time, if they have options of other markets, other suppliers. So they will rely on government to do some of these testings and promotion of these species. Are there any plans for us to test our wood structural test in Guyana?
Thanks, Lawrence. There are plans. I think you're absolutely right when you say that you know, we have these species, but maybe not enough is known. And as I'm saying, you know, we have actually been working with the U.S. Forest Service, I think, to do some testing for us. But again, a lot more. You know, the clearest testing of these species can be quite costly, and that's why I mentioned that there is support that is necessary in this regard. But yes, efforts are being made. Certainly, the level of the commission to sort of continue that dialogue with possible sources of where this testing can be done and so on. But I think unless we actually get that right in that sense at the start, it is still going to continue to be a challenge for us to be able to get those species to be utilized more, both locally and abroad as well.
Thank you, Kenny. I have a question here. I just want to be clear on it here. Can you ask him, I'm not too sure if this will be directed to Wim or Kenny, but either you gentlemen can answer, to speak to the UK's policy for Guyana timber and value of FLEGT versus certification. What's the value of FLEGT versus certification when it comes to UK policy? Not too sure if you understand that well enough to answer, Kenny.
I'll answer the best way I understand it. I'm not sure I understand it. The value of FLEGT versus certification for UK timber. I think we have had extensive discussions on with the UK in terms of where does FLEGT stack up against certification. I think the High Commissioner touched on this a little bit as well in his opening remarks, that we have not been able to achieve what we were hoping, and that is to ensure to get to the place where FLEGT licensed timber gives it the kind of access to the UK market that it should. And it was one of the things that he was saying yesterday that he hoped he was able to get more traction on. So I think though, and in fact we've had, and I think you were involved in some of those discussions with the UK in terms of producing, because I think a large part of the question or answering the question has to do with sustainability. And I think all of the panelists touch on, or some of them touch on this as well, the sustainability aspect of it. And I think we have managed to, we've done a lot of work has been done that clearly shows, and it is still the green art question, whether green art is sustainable and sustainably managed. And clearly the results are astounding. Yes, it is. But again, the VPA, and I think Malcolm touched on this, may not be as, it may not cover all the bases as FSC does. So in that regard, I think there's still a need for some more discussion, and whether or not, and I think it actually brings into focus the whole question of should we in a greater way embrace the whole FSC, PFC, while we're also on the road to a VPA. It may actually make more sense to do it that way, which is the discussion we're currently having.
Thank you, Kenny. I appreciate you answering that question, even though it wasn't your comfort zone. However, correction, I just now reading here, that question is actually for Mr. Dave Hopkins from the UK TTF. Could Dave answer that question for us, and could we get a technical support on that? Thank you anyway, Kenny.
Yeah, hi, this is Dave Hopkins. Can you hear me okay?
Hear you well, thank you.
Okay. No, thanks. I've only just joined fairly late into the discussion, so forgive me if I've missed some of the things. To pick up on that one point about FSC and FLEGT and the market access, I think that this is a big debate that is going to affect every single VPA country. And you have to balance several things. One is a lack of communication and marketing on behalf of FLEGT as an initiative globally, a lack of understanding, therefore, within procurement circles and within the trade and the wider industry that's going to be importing. And then there is a desire on behalf of FSC and PEFC to defend their brand position, just like any other company, just like anybody else. This is business, and they are going to defend their brand because they don't want to lose market share. And I think we have to understand all of those elements working together, and they work together at the same time. These initiatives are slightly different, and they require an explanation on behalf of the producer to really explain what they are. So I think when we're tackling these things, one, I would say there needs to be a coordination by governments who have signed VPA agreements to really lobby hard on behalf of the forestry sector in each of those VPA countries to actually make sure that the importing countries, particularly in the UK, do not put barriers to a FLEGT licensed product. And right now, our national procurement policy for timber states that FLEGT licenses, FSC and PEFC are all valid under the UK timber procurement policy. So if a government agency, which is the Environment Agency in this regard, which buys Greenheart primarily in the UK, if they are saying that they will not accept a FLEGT license, well, that is a breach of the national procurement policy. And it does require, I think, advocacy on behalf of the government of Guyana, beyond just the forestry level and beyond just the Environment Agency, so that we raise it up to a higher plane to show that there is one agency in the UK government which is undermining the efforts of the national government. So that's one point I would make, and I think that we would be more than happy to support any efforts in that regard. I think at the moment the barriers to access for FLEGT license into other areas is ridiculous. And I'm a very vocal advocate of the FLEGT process and the FLEGT licensing regime. And I do think that the whole process globally for all of the countries that have signed VPA agreements needs a lot more impetus and a lot more support from the governments that have put time and effort in. Just on a couple of other points, I do think also, sticking with the main theme of marketing and communications, for things like lesser known species, nobody's thinking of species as such. You've got to think of the end use of that species. Where's it going? Is it in boat building? Is it in decking? Is it in marine infrastructure? Is it decoration and furniture? And think of those end uses, and your marketing for those lesser known species needs to really highlight the benefit to the end user. And that end user may be a boat builder or an architect or a furniture designer, and think about the benefits to them. And you can tell your sustainability story by really, and tell the FLEGT license story and all of the transformations that are happening in Guyana. You can tell that story by telling the story of the end use. And in marketing to that end use, you'll be able to capture all of the information about the species, the transformation you're making within the country, within the forestry sector, and so on. So there were two different questions there, but with FLEGT and FSC, there is still a lot of work to do to counter the brand defense position that FSC and PEFC hold. And I don't want to be negative about them. The certification companies were, they've gone ahead and done all of this work for 20 something years, and they've done a good job because there was no regulation. But now that there is regulation, we need to be able to advance that, and we can't have other forest actors being seen or seeing FLEGT as some kind of enemy. We've got to be able to push these up on equal terms.
Thank you, Dave. Dave, you and I will be talking a lot more. That's Dave from the UK Timber Trade Federation, and I appreciate those comments. And one surprising comment from Dave there, he's not a business person there to manufacture, produce a product, but what he said there about you have to start from your consumer demand. Sometimes we go cut the tree, we produce all this timber, we didn't identify our consumer, we didn't identify our product. It's really the basic of marketing. So we need to first identify our product and then work our way to the source and how we're going to produce that product. And I really think that we need more bilateral intervention to getting these, finding remedies to these issues when it comes to trade and third-party certifications and so on, because government needs to do their part, government to government, because I've been to the UK and we have fought and tried to get them to understand that the FLEGT initiative could make a difference. The VPA licensing will make a difference. Guyana is doing a tremendous job, a very good job with regards to chain of custody certification in our own way. Our forest is not impacted, and I see tremendous efforts being done. And I would like to have our potential buyers who are listening here today is to embrace us and support us. On that note, I would like to say thank you to the donors who have been supporting Guyana with this VPA initiative progress, the FLEGT initiative. Thank you very much, because it is expensive, and I've seen even for this forum here today, the cost that goes into it. We saw recently initiative being done by the FAO and many donor organizations out there that is helping Guyana. We appreciate it. I would like to close the session by reading to you a few takeaways. So just permit me to read. I have some assistants sending me some takeaways here, and I may even mention some to you as well on my own. So opportunities: Guyana has alternative species, replace heavy and more costly greenheart. So This is these are the opportunities. I'll repeat that again. Guyana has alternative species to replace heavy and more costly green heart. So we need to look at alternative species. Next, FLEGT has a system that can open up markets opportunities. So we just spoke about that. So what FLEGT is doing, it is giving us an opportunity and more awareness of Guyana on a national and a global scale. So we want to be able to look at FLEGT as an opportunity to help promote other species. The other opportunities here, there are multiple products being demanded by the market. Example, plywood, green heart, that Guyana could produce. So we did hear about that we need to take opportunities of that. Load containers more efficiently to reduce costs of shipping. Cost of shipping is a major challenge, especially to the Far East, Europe, and many other countries. So efficient ways of loading. The other opportunities here, valuable, to include value-added products as revised in the VPA. If possible, include value-added products. And this was a new one for me here today. So definitely that is an opportunity that we need to seize. Some challenges here, quality control. This is a major one, as we know. We have too much waste wood, dimensional tolerances, concerns. So we need to face up to our challenges when it comes to quality and get better with that when it comes to a supply country. Cost comparison, green heart comparing to pine. Andrew, thank you very much for that comparison. We see the world is demanding timber that is easier to use, easier to manage, and flexible, and so on. We do have some niche market, but I think overall we need to get our cost better in order to compete with the world market. FSC certification, independent verification, we just spoke about, and requirement. It is expensive, and we do hope that the VPA and the FLEGT initiative will make this even more affordable and possible. These are some opportunities and challenges that we have just discussed. There are many things that I can continue to tell you about. I would like to say a special thank you to my three panelists and who have taken the quality time from their busy schedule. I am very pleased with your wealth of knowledge. Cumulatively, your companies has about 260 years of experience in the industry. I thank you very much for your participation. Those who I did not get a chance to thank, I would like to ask for your forgiveness. I ask that you will continue to support our initiatives that we are proceeding to do with the VPA and the FLEGT initiative, and in terms of helping to bridge the barriers that we are facing in Guyana to get our timber into the market. Thank you again, and that is the end of the session from my side here. Thank you.